how we roll. Last day, Washington, D.C.
Financial technology is getting a lot of attention today, but behind every technology story are people working hard to help advisors build a better business. We're traveling across the country to meet those people and learn why they are dedicated to the success of advisors. These are the innovators, these are their stories. This is FPPad Tech Tour. FPPad Tech Tour is brought to you by Backstage sponsors, InvestNet Tamarack, Orion Advisor Services, and Redtail Technology, with additional support provided by these roadie sponsors. For our final stop in Washington, D.C., we headed to the National Mall to connect with Rich Ellinger, founder and CEO of Wealthminder. As we found a shady spot near the Washington Monument, I wanted to learn more about why he is building technology solutions for financial advisors.
Well, Rich, this is what FPPad Tech Tour is about. We're in scenes like this and settings like this because it's relevant to your story and relevant to your passion on helping this industry move forward. So I'm curious to know what really gets you excited about the work that you're doing with Wealthminder. What really gets you motivated to apply your skill set to work on something that's fulfilling?
You know, when I first started this company, it was a combination of some data that I looked at that said there are 118 million households in this country that have investable assets, but of that 108 million have under $500,000, and about 90 million have under 100,000. And I would argue a consequence of those statistics is most people simply don't have enough money to make a traditional relationship with a human financial advisor work.
Well, certainly lots of advisors have high minimums, and they provide full suites of services that may not scale to more mass affluent individuals.
Yep, but then on the flip side, the discount brokerages really don't provide planning advice or guidance today. You end up with this huge audience, let's call it 100 million households, that really has no place to turn for sort of comprehensive financial advice. And so that's what got me excited. You got this massive audience that represents most of America, and then you look at how much people really do need help, and sort of like we're living longer now, key costs like education and healthcare are rising faster than inflation, pensions and other safety nets have gone away, and so we have more of a burden to shoulder, and we have to shoulder more of it. And yet nothing's really changed to help that population. And so you put all of that together, and that's sort of what gets me excited, is there's this huge audience that really does need help, and we think we can help them. And we think the only way to do that is through a combination of technology and human advice.
How did you get from where you were about a decade ago to founding and launching Wealthminder? I see a lot of COO, CTO roles in your background. I'm curious to learning more about your background and how that's prepared you to be where you are today.
You know, when I started out of college, I was a software developer. So,
like me.
I didn't know that, actually. So you were a software developer too?
For sure, for 10 years, writing low-level code for kids' toys.
Okay, all right. I went to Stanford, did CS, but I also did political science. So I've always kind of had an interest in both the business as well as the technical side. And so out of school, I worked at Oracle as a developer. And after that, I said, you know what, I didn't really like the environment where in a large corporation, you kind of do one function and you're very siloed from everything else. And I kind of wanted more of an interdisciplinary work on a lot of things. So I moved into the startup world. You know, if you look at my career, the thing that's a common theme, I look at large problem spaces where technology can be brought to bear, and I try and figure out, basically understand that domain and figure out how to marry the two together. So I've done 6 startups, but they've all been in completely different spaces. I've had a guy who's been a mentor throughout my career. His name's Bobby Yazdani, and he's like, you need to start another company. I'm like, well, that's great. I'm like, that's great, Bobby, but you got to have an idea to do that, right? And so I said, and I don't know that I have an idea. And he's like, well, I think there are a couple spaces that are really interesting. And so financial services was one of those spaces. He was more interested in disrupting like the Bloomberg terminal concept, or that was his original idea. But as I started looking at it, like I said, there were sort of 3 things that came together for me. There were those stats about the number of people need help. There's all the data we read about how people are further and further off track with respect to their long-term goals. And then there were my own personal experiences, which was I had, after Saab went public, I hired a financial advisor, and I wasn't terribly satisfied with that relationship. On the other hand, after Webb's was sold, I went and I said, I'm going to go do this myself again. I've always had an interest and passion in investing. So the nice thing about this startup, I was one of those kids as a teenager who read the business pages back when they actually had business pages. All the other startups I've done, they've been business problems that needed to solve, and so I had an intellectual interest in them from that perspective, but I never really had a passion about the problem. Whereas I'd say this go around, I actually have a genuine interest in investing. It's a hobby of mine. Like, I enjoy that whole domain space. So that's what's kind of different about it this time. But ultimately, I looked to put those 3 things together, and I said, I think this is a need, it's an opportunity, and I was looking at what other people were doing, and I felt like we could bring a different take to the solution, basically.
As people learn more about Wealthminder, as people learn more about you, certainly you're meeting more and more advisors and more enterprise connections at events. But in those events, it doesn't always come out about things that you're passionate about and things that some people may not know about you. And so I'm curious if you can share something that maybe is one of your interests or one of your hobbies or something that you do outside of work to release from the day-to-day programming and technical business administration.
Well, I think there are two things probably. I mean, at this stage of my life, I do have a family. So I've got two kids, 11 and 16. And so I would say most of the time that I'm not focused on work, I'm focused on them. So they're both really big into soccer. That's their big sport. They do travel soccer. And so I spend a lot of my weekends at soccer tournaments and sort of soccer games. So I'd say that's one thing. I play both tennis and basketball. It's sort of my major outlet. So I do that a couple times a week.
So are you a little competitive? I mean,
I'm fairly competitive, yes. In fact, that's probably one of my biggest sources of frustration with my children is they are not nearly as competitive as I am. So I'm a little on the competitive side. I think that's fair to say.
Now, turning the direction back to Wealthminder, I'm curious what you see in the future for what you're developing, and I really want to hear about your commitment to advisors, because certainly there's an element that the platform can serve the end retail investor, but you've chosen to offer a solution for advisors. I'm really interested in hearing your desire to help advisors move forward.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. So one, once again, looking at some statistics in this case.
You're very data-driven, aren't you?
I'm a very data-driven, well, it's shocking, I'm a computer scientist, right?
Right.
So we looked at some stats that basically said about 70% of human beings fundamentally want the help at some level of a human being. In some cases, they want to fully delegate. In some cases, they just want to be validated. But there is still a significant portion of the world that wants to be self-directed and really doesn't want the help from a human advisor. And if you ask me sort of the long-term mission of the company, I'd like to service all of those audiences, right? At this point, I don't envision a world where we're trying to compete with our advisors, but I do sort of view us as a technology provider that can enable both people that today service self-directed customers as well as people that are advisors, right? But the larger audience is people that want human help, so that's why we focus there first. I think what they need to be able to do when I look at their businesses, for them to make it affordable and effective for them as business people to actually help that larger audience, they really need to do two things. They need to lower the cost of acquiring that customer, and they need to lower the cost of servicing that customer. And at a high level, those are the two problems we're focused on at Wealthminder, helping them solve.
I think those are really important solutions that you provide. Advisors, I tell them to focus on what they do best, which is maintaining relationships, providing the advice, and working through the statistics and the analysis of what does it cost to acquire a new client, what's the lifetime value of those clients. Those, I think, are foreign to most advisors unless they came through the entrepreneurial and MBA side of the business. So I'm detecting that you really can boost advisors with that resource so they can do what they do best.
Yeah, that's the hope. And we're learning that, right, as we go in. That it's one thing, like the advisors are really today, they see our solution and like, this is great, I love it. But where they run into a struggle, I think, is how do they actually implement that in their business? And a lot of them are asking us to and almost teach them how to help their business work in that regard, right? Like, how do I market to that person? How do I attract that person? Because maybe I haven't traditionally done that. How do I service them? So what we're learning is we need to provide more than just the software and sort of assume, hey, they're business people, they know how to run their business. We're just providing the technology to do it better. I think we're going to have to evolve a little bit ourselves and say we've got to help sort of teach them to fish in this particular market.
So that's good. Like any good professional engineer, you're deploying, you're testing, you're iterating, and you're moving forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we keep learning every day. We learn something new that we didn't know before. So that's what gets me excited, right? Is if I had all the answers, then it gets boring. I think a lot of it is that sort of day-to-day learning. And what is it that we didn't know yesterday that now we can try and apply and we can try and help solve?
That's great. I think you have a very good mission. I've enjoyed really learning more about your passion for it. I have a lot of confidence, and I really look forward to what you're bringing forward in the near future.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Bill.
Now, Rich, one of the things that I'm doing on FPPad Tech Tour is not only covering stories like yours for technology innovators, but we're also spreading awareness and raising money for the Foundation for Financial Planning and the great work that they do to support pro bono financial planning nationwide. So can I request that you make a donation and a contribution to the Foundation because of your activity here on FPPad Tech Tour?
Yeah, absolutely. I really believe in the mission of the Foundation. I mean, it fits very nicely with what we're saying, right, as a company, right?
It does.
I mean, we're saying we're trying to bring financial planning through our technology to an underserved audience, and the Foundation's trying to bring it by making more financial resources available to make that happen for all parties involved. So absolutely.
Terrific, Rich. I'd love to have your support. And again, for anyone watching, ladies and gentlemen, you can make a donation as well going to the FPPadTechTour.com website. There's a donate button. Make your contribution today. Thank you so much, Rich, for your contribution to the Foundation.
Absolutely.
On the next episode of FPPad Tech Tour.
I don't have any steering. Oh my God, there's no gears.
Bye.